It's one of those mornings where everything feels heavy before I even get out of bed. My eyes flick open, and immediately I feel this sick, tight knot in my stomach. It's like my gut trying to tell me something's wrong, but I don't want to face it yet. I reach across the bed, expecting to feel her warm back, her soft hair, but there's nothing there. The sheets are cold and rumpled, the way they get when she's been sneaking around. Yesterday was supposed to be a vacation, a break from the grind. Just a few days away, some family time, maybe a little relaxation. Instead, it turned into a nightmare. I remember her laughing in that way she does when she thinks she's hiding something, her voice smooth, her eyes darting just a little too quick. I didn't think much of it then, just a weird feeling in my gut I shrugged off. Now I wish I had pushed harder, looked closer. Today I found something that knocked the wind out of me. I was sorting through our suitcases just to tidy up before we left. That's when I saw it, a receipt tucked between her clothes, half hidden under a pile of socks. It was from a hotel somewhere near the coast. Nothing unusual on the surface, but then I looked closer. The date was the night we arrived at the family house during the first evening of the trip. I stared at it, the paper trembling in my hand. My fingers went numb, my tongue felt thick. I looked at the details, her name, the hotel name, the time. Then I saw the charge, an extra, a hefty one, and immediately my head spun. That's when I noticed the unfamiliar number saved in her phone, under a name that didn't belong to any of us. I wanted to confront her then and there, but I hesitated. I didn't want to ruin the trip, not yet. Instead, I kept my mouth shut, packed the evidence away, and made a decision. I'd find out the truth myself, no matter what it took. Later that night, when everyone was asleep, I snuck out of our room and into hers. The door was slightly ajar, which isn't normal for her. My heart hammered in my chest. I eased the door open, and what I saw, it's burned into my brain. There they were, her on her phone, giggling softly, her hair falling over her shoulders. And beside her, a shadow I didn't want to believe, my brother. His voice was muffled, but the intimacy between them, it screamed betrayal. I saw enough. Hands clenched into fists, I backed out slowly, trying not to make a sound. In the quiet darkness, I felt the world tilt. My stomach clenched so tight I thought I might throw up. My head buzzed with confusion, rage, and a sick sense of betrayal. How long had this been going on? How could she lie to my face, smile, pretend everything was fine? I held that image, the two of them, so close, so secretive, until I could barely breathe. I knew then that this wasn't just a slip-up or a one-time mistake. It was a calculated lie, a betrayal of everything we'd built. The trip that was supposed to be a family vacation. It was a cover-up. I could feel the heat of anger rising in my chest, the kind that makes your palms sweat and your vision blur. I had to get out of there before I did something I'd regret. I quietly slipped back into our room, heart pounding, mind racing. I lay there staring at the ceiling, trying to process what I'd seen. Every breath felt like a punch to the gut. I couldn't sleep after that. I kept replaying everything, her laughter, his touch, the way my stomach had dropped. I kept questioning what I did wrong, what I missed, why I wasn't enough. But deep down I knew this was her game, her lie. She'd been lying to me for months, maybe longer, and I was just too blind or too trusting to see it. Now I sit here, writing this out, feeling the sting of betrayal like a fresh wound. I want to believe I'll be okay, but right now, the only thing clear is that my world's crashing down. And I know that I won't stay quiet about this much longer. The question is, what's my next move? That night, after I finally managed to drag myself out of that restless haze, I started planning in my head. It was like my brain refused to shut down, circling around that image, her, laughing softly on her phone, my brother's shadowed face. The betrayal felt like a punch to the gut every time I thought about it, but now came the question, what do I do with this? I knew I couldn't just confront her blindly. I had to be smarter, colder. I started to piece together everything I knew, everything I'd seen. My mind kept circling back to the hotel charge and the phone number. The evidence was there, clear as day. But I needed more, something concrete, undeniable. I decided I'd dig deeper, find out where they'd gone, what they'd done, what they'd said. The next morning, I woke up with a knot of determination in my stomach. I faked a smile at breakfast, but every bite I took tasted like ash. I watched her, trying to gauge her mood, her body language. She was unaware I was onto her, or maybe she was just pretending. Either way, I had to act. Later that day, I borrowed her phone when she wasn't looking just to check the messages. I didn't expect much, just a little peek, a way to confirm my suspicions. But what I found was worse than I imagined. There were messages more than I'd ever seen, filled with flirtatious language, secret emojis, and even plans for more meetups. They weren't just casual texts, they were full-on dirty talk. My skin crawled. My fists clenched so tight I thought my nails might cut into my palms. I could feel the heat rising in my face, the hot rush of anger mixed with betrayal. I wanted to scream or break something. Instead, I kept calm, closed her phone softly, and tucked it away. I needed a plan, not just to hurt her but to make sure she felt the weight of what she'd done. I couldn't let her get away with it. I also thought about my brother. What kind of man does this? I knew I'd have to deal with him too once I was ready. That night, I got a burner phone. I wasn't going to contact her or my brother directly, at least not yet. Instead, I searched for every detail I could find about their meetings. I wanted to know where they'd gone, what hotel, what time. I was determined to uncover the full story. My goal was to catch her in the act if I could, to make her realize I wasn't stupid or blind. By the time the sun was setting, I had a pretty good idea of their last few meetups. I found the hotel registration, details online which confirmed her stories about business dinners or work trips. But I knew better now. I could feel it in my bones. This was just the surface of a bigger mess. Every plan I considered was cold, calculated. I wasn't going to storm in and yell or throw punches. I wanted her to feel small, cornered, shaken. I wanted her to realize I was not the fool she thought I was. I even thought about slipping something into her luggage, something that would make her realize I knew everything. But I wasn't rushing. I was building my case, setting up my move. Meanwhile, her behavior was strange. She was more tense, more on edge, maybe sensing that I was onto her. She kept throwing nervous glances, trying to hide her phone, but I saw her stress. I knew she was worried I might find out more. Good. That's exactly how I wanted her to feel. The more I watched her, the clearer it became that this was no accidental slip. This was planned, deliberate, and she was so deep in her lies she probably didn't even see how exposed she was. I felt a strange numbness settle over me, part anger, part relief that I'd finally uncovered the truth. Now it was just about timing. I sat there staring at the dimming sunset, and I knew this was just the beginning. Once I revealed what I knew, everything would change. Her world, my world, everything would come crashing down. And honestly, I was ready for that, because even if I had to lose everything, I wouldn't let her get away with this. Not without a fight. So I quietly packed a small bag, not with anger but with resolve. The plan was coming together. I just had to wait for the right moment. But deep down, I knew this was going to go one of two ways. Either I'd finally get my justice or I'd walk away, broken but free. Either way, I was done pretending. The waiting game was the worst. Every hour felt like a year. I kept telling myself to stay calm, but inside I was boiling. Every little glance she threw my way, every nervous flicker in her eyes, just confirmed what I already knew. She was nervous, guilty. She knew I was close to unraveling her story. And honestly, that made me feel a strange mix of satisfaction and disgust. I started to plan my next move carefully. I wasn't going to rush into anything. I needed her to slip up again, to make a mistake I could catch her on. The plan was simple in theory: catch her in the act, then confront her with undeniable proof. But executing it, that was the tricky part. I had to be subtle, patient, and ruthless enough to get what I wanted without blowing everything up prematurely. One evening, she was unusually tense. Her hands kept trembling as she checked her phone every few minutes. Her eyes darted around the room, avoiding mine. I could feel her anxiety like a punch to the gut. That was the moment I knew I'd waited for. I decided I'd lay my trap then. I had already arranged for a little surprise to happen. I secretly installed a tracking app on her phone just to see where she was going. Her movements that night confirmed my worst fears. She was sneaking out again. I watched her slip away, her face pale but determined. I followed her at a distance, my heart pounding in my chest. She wound up at that same hotel, the one from the receipt. I parked a few streets away and waited behind a row of trees, straining to see through the dimming twilight. Soon I saw her enter the lobby, her shoulders hunched. Moments later, my brother appeared and they slipped into a side door. My stomach twisted. I felt a rush of cold fury. No more waiting. I snapped a quick photo of them entering the hotel, then left. I knew now where they'd be, what they'd do. Next step was to catch them red-handed. I wasn't about to just accuse her blindly. I needed proof, something undeniable that would shatter her lies completely. The next morning, I bought a small voice recorder and slipped it into her purse when she wasn't looking. I told myself it was for safety, but really it was to catch her off guard, record her talking about me, about the trip, about everything. I wanted her to slip, to say something I could use against her. That night, I stayed up late, listening to the recordings I'd made. Her voice was calm, but I caught snippets of conversation, flirtatious, intimate. I heard her say things I'd never imagined she'd say about her own marriage. My stomach clenched so hard I thought I might throw up, and then she made a mistake. I heard her mention Tom, her code name for him, talking about their plans for next time. I could feel the blood drain from my face. That was the confirmation I needed. She was planning more, hiding it all behind her lies. At that point, I knew I couldn't hold back anymore. I wanted to confront her, but I also knew I had to be strategic. I decided I'd wait until she was most vulnerable, when she was alone, unguarded, maybe even tired, because then I'd drop the bomb. I felt a strange calm settle over me as I prepared for the final act. I'd caught her red-handed, recorded her confession, and had proof of everything. I almost couldn't believe I'd come this far. How long I'd ignored the signs, deceived myself into thinking maybe it was just a mistake, a one-time thing. But no, now I knew everything. It was almost ironic. I'd spent years building a life with her, trusting her, loving her. And all it took was a few days of spying and digging to uncover her entire double life. I'd be lying if I said I wasn't furious. When I finally confronted her, she'd face the truth she'd tried to hide behind her smiles and lies. But first, I had to get her alone. I had to make sure she'd hear it from me, see my face when I told her what I knew. I kept thinking about her reaction, the shame I wanted to see in her eyes. That feeling of betrayal, it burned deep in my chest. I'd been betrayed in the worst way, and I wasn't about to let her get away with it without facing the consequences. Waiting was agonizing, but I knew the moment would come soon. I felt a strange mixture of dread and relief. The game was almost over, and when it was done, everything would change forever. The question was, how deep would her shame run? And what would I do once I had her face to face, knowing she'd lied to me for so long? That evening, I was a mess of nerves and adrenaline. My palms felt slick, my stomach was a tight knot, but I knew I couldn't back out now. I'd spent days setting this up, waiting for the right moment, and it was finally here. I kept replaying everything I had uncovered, the hotel footage, the recordings, the texts. The evidence was irrefutable. She was sitting on the couch, scrolling absent-mindedly through her phone, her face tense. I watched her, trying to keep my emotions in check, but inside I was boiling with rage. This was it. Time to end the charade. I took a deep breath, then sat across from her. She looked up, startled, her eyes darting away quickly. I saw her tighten her jaw when she realized I'd been watching her all day. Good, that's exactly how I wanted her. Who is Tom, really? I asked quietly, voice gravelly with controlled anger. She froze for a second, then looked away. Her hands trembled. You've been lying to me this whole trip, I continued, voice sharper now. I know everything. Her face paled. She tried to speak, but no words came. Instead, she looked at her hands, then back up at me, silent, guilty. I could see it, the shame, the fear, the moment she realized I wasn't going to let her keep hiding. I saw the hotel receipts, I said coldly. Messages, I heard your voice on the recordings. You lied to my face all this time. My voice cracked slightly, but I pushed through. How long has this been going on? She swallowed hard, eyes glistening with tears. I didn't mean for it to happen, she whispered. It was a mistake, just once, I snapped, voice rising. Don't lie to me now. I've seen enough to know it's been more than once, more than just a mistake. You've been planning this. Her shoulders shook as she tried to fight back tears. I was stupid. I didn't want to hurt you, it just happened. I clenched my fists so tightly my nails dug into my palms. Happened, that's your excuse. You cheated on me with my own brother and you expect me to believe it was just a slip-up. She looked down, tears streaming down her face now. I'm sorry, I don't know what I was thinking, I just felt lost and he made me feel alive again. That was the last straw. I felt the rage boil over. Not with her at her, yes, but also with myself. How had I let this go? On so long, how could I have been so blind? I want you out, I said coldly, standing up. Get your things and leave, I don't want to see you again. Her sobs broke through, loud and heartbreaking, but I didn't care. The betrayal was too raw, too real. I turned my back on her and started gathering her clothes. As she packed, I felt a strange sense of relief mixed with annoying emptiness. When she finally left the house, she hesitated at the door, voice trembling. Please don't do this. Fix it. I looked at her, bitter and exhausted. No, there's nothing left to fix. I handed her the keys, watching her walk out into the night. The door shut behind her, echoing in the silence. The house suddenly felt colder, emptier. I sank onto the couch, staring at the empty space where she'd been. I felt a strange mixture of triumph and devastation. I'd finally uncovered the truth, but at what cost? My world was shattered. Something I'd spent years building now broken beyond repair. But at least now, I knew everything. And I knew I'd never let her lie to me. Again, the pain was real, but so was the clarity. Now I could finally start healing, or at least try to. I sat there in the dark, feeling every nerve in my body thrumming with raw emotion. I'd lost her, yes, but I'd gained something to myself again. And that was the first step toward moving on. Would you like me to continue with the next part? The house was dead silent the next morning. I stayed in the living room, staring at the empty space where she'd been just hours before. My mind kept rewinding to everything. Her lies, the betrayal, the moment I finally saw her for who she really was. It felt like a heavy weight was pressing down on my chest, but beneath all that, there was a strange sense of clarity. I knew her departure wasn't just about ending a marriage, it was about reclaiming my life. Still, I didn't feel relief exactly, more like a numb resignation. My hands were trembling slightly as I poured myself a glass of whiskey just to steady the nerves. I wanted to feel something, anger, hatred, maybe even satisfaction. But all I got was this hollow ache. My mind was a whirlwind of thoughts. What do I do now? How do I move forward from this? And then there was the question I kept avoiding. What about my brother? He'd betrayed me just as much, maybe even more, considering the intimacy of what he'd done. I knew I'd have to face him eventually, but I wasn't ready yet. I spent most of the day organizing my thoughts, going over every detail I'd uncovered. I knew I needed to confront him, but I also knew I had to do it carefully. I had the evidence now, photos, recordings, messages. Those would be my ammunition. But I wasn't just interested in revenge. I wanted justice, closure, something that would make him understand the pain he'd caused. That evening I called a friend, someone I trust. I needed advice, someone who wouldn't judge, who'd help me plan the next steps. I told him everything and his response was straightforward. You've got enough to make him regret ever crossing that line, but you gotta be smart. Don't let them see you coming. He was right. I decided I'd wait until I was ready, then hit them where it hurt. I wanted him to know I was onto him, that I had proof of everything. I didn't want a messy fight, I wanted control. To make them feel small, exposed, cornered. So I kept building my case. I kept collecting evidence, more messages, more recordings. I even contacted a private investigator I knew, just to confirm the hotel details and get footage if possible. Every step made me feel more powerful, more in control of the situation I'd been helplessly caught in. Meanwhile, I kept my composure around friends and family, hiding what I truly felt. Nobody knew what was happening inside me, how much it hurt to lose her, how much anger I carried for my brother. But I also felt a strange sense of liberation. For the first time in months, I was taking control of my story. I made one thing clear to myself. I wasn't going to let her or him ruin me. They made their choices, and I'd make sure they understood the consequences. I was going to give them a taste of their own medicine, make them realize what betrayal really felt like. The night came when I finally felt ready to act. I had everything I needed: proof, a plan, and a cold, disciplined mind. I called my brother first, told him I wanted to meet. His voice was nervous, hesitant, but I was calm, icy even. I told him I knew everything, that I had recordings, receipts, everything he'd tried to hide. His silence on the other end told me all I needed to know. I told him I wasn't interested in a fight, but I wanted to make him understand what it felt like to be betrayed. I didn't threaten him outright. I just let the evidence speak for itself. Next, I prepared to confront her. I knew she'd try to deny it, plead innocence, but she couldn't. Not anymore. I had her recorded, her messages. They painted a picture she couldn't escape from. That night I left a small package on her doorstep, a USB drive containing everything. Photographs, recordings, all the truth. No words, just that one quiet message. This is your reality now. Remember it. I felt a strange sense of calm as I walked away from her house. It was like I'd finally taken the first real step toward reclaiming my life. I knew the fallout would be intense. They'd try to spin it, deny it, maybe even blame me. But I didn't care. I'd done my part. Now I'd wait for the inevitable fallout to unfold. Whatever came next, I was done being the victim. I was taking control, and no one was going to take that away from me. Would you like me to continue with the final part? The days that followed were a whirlwind of chaos and realization. I watched from a distance as the dominoes started to fall, her calls to friends, the awkward conversations, the way she avoided eye contact when passing by. I knew she'd listened to the evidence I left, and I saw the panic spreading in her eyes. That was what I wanted, her to feel exposed, vulnerable, and finally face the consequences of her betrayal. My brother, he didn't come around much after I handed him that evidence. I didn't need to confront him again. I already knew the damage was done. His silence was deafening enough. I imagine he's feeling the weight of guilt, shame. Whatever regret he might harbor, it doesn't compare to the pain I've carried. But I was done with waiting. I wanted clarity. I wanted closure. One day I stood in front of her house with a bag of her belongings, the keys, everything I needed to sever that chapter of my life. I took a deep breath, knowing this was it. I knocked on her door, and when she opened it, her face was pale. Her eyes flicked nervously, searching for an escape she knew she wouldn't find. "I want you to have your things," I said quietly, voice steady but cold. "And I want to be clear, this is over. No more lies, no more secrets. I deserve honesty, and I won't settle for anything less." She looked at me, tears streaming down her face. "Please don't do this," she begged. "We can fix it, I swear." "You swore," I interrupted, my voice hardening. "But I've seen what you're really capable of. I've heard everything, and I'm done." I handed her the bag, then reached into my pocket to grab the keys. "Here, your house, your life, what's left of it. I hope it's what you wanted." She clutched the bag to her chest, trembling. "I didn't mean to hurt you," she whispered. "I loved you, that's the thing," I said, voice low and deliberate. "Love doesn't hurt like this. Love is betrayal, lies, and sneaking around. Love is respect, trust, honesty. You lost all of that long ago." I turned away then, not bothering to see her breakdown, because I knew she'd use it as leverage somehow. I'd already made my choice. Enough was enough. I'd finally taken back control of my life, no matter how bitter the taste. As I walked down the driveway, I felt a strange mix of relief and emptiness. The weight I'd carried for so long was finally lifting. I'd uncovered the truth, faced the pain, and now I was free. Was it the ending I wanted? Not entirely, but it was the ending I needed. Back in my apartment, I sat alone on the couch, the silence ringing loudly in my ears. I looked around at the empty space, at the life I'd shared with her, now gone. My hands trembled slightly as I reached for a glass of water, feeling every nerve in my body still raw. It was over, and for the first time in months, I allowed myself to breathe freely. The betrayal cut deep, but I'd survived it. I'd faced the truth, and I'd chosen to walk away from the wreckage, rather than drown in it. Looking back now, I realized that the pain was part of a necessary process. It hurt, yes. It crushed pieces of my world, but it also forced me to see what was real and what was fake. I learned that trust, once broken, isn't easily repaired. And sometimes the best revenge is simply walking away, stronger and more aware than before. So here's my advice. Trust your instincts, don't ignore the red flags, and never be afraid to face the truth, no matter how ugly it gets. Because in the end, the only person who truly owns your happiness is you. And sometimes, the bravest thing you can do is walk away and rebuild.